Our speaker this afternoon is fantastic. I've met him. He's just a delight. I'm going to try to say his name right. Pankaj Seth. Dr. Pankaj Seth is a naturopath. He studied at the Naturopathic College in Toronto, which is becoming widely renowned and respected. He's in private practice in Toronto, and his practice is a wide-based one where he deals with Ayurveda, yoga, acupuncture, meditation, and something that he's called, interestingly enough, clinical pranayama, where he uses pranayama, the focus of it, which is, of course, one focus was for health, and he uses it in a very specific way to promote health in his clients. He has just finished making a documentary film. It's documentary, right? It wasn't fiction. Documentary film called Soma, the Yogic Quest. And he's here to speak with us this afternoon. So let's give him a really, really warm welcome. Mike will help you with you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So the talk is entitled How Soma Gives Immortality. This is a central motif in India going back all the way to the earliest sacred text, the Vedas. So that we have this idea of immortality. Immortality as a self-experience. This is the state of consciousness knowing itself as consciousness, which has no beginning or end. We could call it a mystical experience, but mystical is not a Sanskrit word. Sanskrit keeps it very simple. So the Veda tells us that immortality continuously sacrifices itself to become mortality. All of this. There's a very famous portion of the Rig Veda, the earliest text, called the Nasadiya Shukta. And it's almost a graduate degree course material in epistemology in a poem. So it talks about, it wonders where all this comes from. How this world arose, who can say? Who has seen it? Even the gods are younger than the world's appearance. How all this comes to be, thought cannot know. But seers have seen, nevertheless, within themselves, how all this is. The connection between what is now and what is called immortality, which is prior. So the pristine condition can have no beginning. If it does, then something is before that. So we have a very interesting epistemological issue around the nature of knowledge. What is the deepest knowledge we can have? Is it in the form of some kind of measurement? That would be the position of the epistemological position known as logical positivism, which runs the modern Western world. Modern world, really. Science follows it. If it's not measurable, it's not real. That kind of thinking. But even real is a concept. You have to define what you mean by real. Physicists encountered that in their quest for reality, for a reality map. It was encountered back in the time of the Vedas. What do we mean by real? Is something that always is real, or is something that changes, comes and goes, real? Because the second one's measurable. First one's not. So the Vedic position is that whatever is measurable, that which is always changing, is secondary. The modern position is, if it's measurable, it's real. But real is just a word. It's just a concept. If the concept is used in a half-baked way, which it often is when people handle Indian stuff, including Indians, is that the word real is made into some kind of big deal in the following way. If I say, the Sanskrit terminology would be Sat and Asat. Sat also turns into Satya, truth. But when we think of that, we could think of truth as a mathematical kind of truth. It's not that kind of truth. It's the truth because it always is. Something that was yesterday but is not today, that's not the truth. It's worth calling something else. We call it impermanent. So we have two categories, the impermanent and the immortal. Right now, and almost always, unless in deep meditation, we are aware of ourselves as both a subject and an object. It's really weird if you observe. Like we are split in two. I'm observing myself as an object. I'm split in two. That's a recipe for madness. Yoga seeks to cure that. So that there's a knowledge of the subject as the subject, which is experienced as light. Why? Because it's formless. It cannot have a form. If it had a form, then it would be limited in time and space. It's not immortal. So, in fact, what we're doing in meditation, in the yoga tradition, is something that eventually has an encounter, an experience similar to near-death experience, so that there's the arising of a light. And now when that light arises in one's awareness, eyes are closed by that time, there's the internal only. Now, whatever it is, one is sure that's what I've been looking for. I don't know how to think about it, but that's it. And it is so holy that a person wants to bow. But there's no form to it. This is not anything recognizable that way, but you recognize it. But in the yoga tradition, we're taught, stay still. Don't accept something external as having power over you, because that makes for an insane world. The Yoga Vashishta says, if an external power is truly the ordainer of everything in this world, of what meaning is any action? Okay, I'll say it again. If an external power is truly the ordainer of everything in this world, of what meaning is any action? It's all a puppet show. Does it feel like that? No. Choices are real. The Yoga Vashishta says, which is a beautiful, grand text, that the deepest thing that you encounter is choice. Freedom. The nature of reality is freedom to be and do whatever it wants. There's nothing behind it or external to it. That's duality. Reality doesn't exist in two chambers, the creator and the created. Because then what stops the creator from being created by something else? The logic is not stopped just by creating some beginning out of the blue. The ultimate cause, as Aristotle thought. But even Aristotle knew that that was an imaginary thing that he'd created, that category. He didn't buy the idea of an ultimate cause, because you just can't make it up just because you say there is one. Where's the proof? And it causes all these problems. Logical problems. There's not a logically consistent idea. Buddha called the first cause inconceivable. Because what stops one from wondering, well, why is it the first cause? What's before it? Right? But all this is still thinking in temporality. Okay? So the yogic literature is chock full of this graduate level plus material on philosophy to frame one's own condition, and gives a methodology, which is simplicity itself. Come to an absolute standstill, so that thought is not making up stories. And when that is sustained for long enough, something happens. What happens is that the experience of oneself being an object to oneself, which is weird, which will be over when we die, but it persists right now. That's present. There's an attachment to that object, the body in the world. Now, does that mean that the body in the world is something evil to be gotten rid of? No, because the larger system, the biggest scheme, the most overarching scheme in India is called the Purusharthas, the four aims of life. Four aims of life. So the question is asked, what makes for a fulfilled life? And the answer is given. There are 4 legitimate aims to a life. Live them all. I'll give the Sanskrit terminology first. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Moksha is the goal of yoga. Dharma means virtue. So living a life in a virtuous way that lets one sleep at night is a good life. That's what one should aim for. Then comes Artha, worldly prosperity. Have a family, have an education, have a nice house, have a good bank account. Legitimate aim of life, Artha, worldly prosperity. But you know what goes along with Dharma, virtue. So it's not something non-virtuous way of collecting these things. It's got to be together. Third, Kama. You might have heard this word already. Kama Sutra, same word, means enjoyment. Enjoyment is a legitimate aim of life. Sensuality, sexuality, the arts, all of that is not something that's optional. If you don't have it, you're going to feel like it's not well-lived life. You need all that. And fourth aim is moksha, freedom, immortality, self-knowledge that goes deeper than the historical. The Mundaka Upanishad says there are 2 kinds of self-knowledge, historical and timeless. And thought cannot reach the timeless. That's why we meditate. Because in meditation we're not thinking. We're trying to get to a point where even truth-bearing thoughts do not occur. Because even they will stop a deeper thing from being witnessed. And at first, the deeper thing we witness is witnessed as an object, as something external to oneself, as a white light. That's what people see when they die, or nearly die. When you nearly die, your brain's shut off, there's no thinking. There's another consciousness is freed from the vehicle. And tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people experience this. We sweep it under the rug. Oh, it's some chemicals or whatever. Okay? There are medical conditions where 90% of the brain is not there. And people are perfectly functioning. Okay? Hydrocephaly, for example, water in the brain. Little bit of 2 millimeters of cells lining the cranium. A person's got a math degree who's got this going on, so we don't need the brain. Brain does not generate consciousness. So we have all these ideas. We're in a worldview which is false worldview. It's not even scientifically valid. But we live in this worldview, and so we become attached to the body. And it's not as if the body is some garbage you get rid of, but it's not the whole story. And one can experience this spontaneously as a near-death experiences. It can be experienced spontaneously as Kundalini arising. The spine is involved in that movement. It can be experienced spontaneously when people are like in war and his mind just becomes still because life is in danger. Everything slows down and things become something else. So what is required is stillness, absolute stillness. Then something will happen and its form may vary. But what is seen at first is a light as an object. It's within oneself, it's part of one's self-experience. But self-experience is split in 2, subject and object. And the subject remains mysterious because if you turn around, you can't see it. It's an infinite regress of watching. It's just endless. But the yoga tradition tells us, and the people, part of the yoga tradition tell us, that stillness, chitta vritti nirodha, stop that movement, is the first stanza in the Yoga Sutra. That's the process. Absolute stillness. And then something happens. You don't even have to try. And now that's, I would say it's difficult to do, but it's easy concept. It's simple, but not easy. But I'm going to suggest never to forget that it's not any more complicated than that. That there might come a time where stillness is just there. And something will reveal itself, and it's oneself, because it's still a self-experience. So there's a white light, and there is an impulse to stop there and to witness this, and to be beneath this, and to see it as an external power. But it's logically incoherent, because if an external power is in charge, then why don't I feel like a puppet? I make choices. I know there's a aspect, part of modern science that says we don't have free will. Well, they're used to falling into their models. Yeah, there's no model for free will because all models are mechanical, and mechanical models do not give free will. So we're never going to find free will in a model. What's their solution? There's no free will. It's right in front of us. There is free will. We choose all the time. So we fall into our models. That's the problem. But our own reality is right here. And at first, it's in two parts, subject and object. Object is all temporal, historical. And it has a beginning and has an end, and it's like, what happens? It's all a mystery. But the subject is to be turned towards for the deepest possible answer. Mundaka Upanishad says there's two kinds of self-knowledge, historical and timeless. It's not like historical is garbage, but it's not the whole story. And in only chasing the historical, the history of the body, one becomes attached to the body. And everything else is not even in view. So there's not even an intuition left that self is a universal something that's common to everything. Self is a principle. It's common to all forms, but it doesn't have form itself. And so a shaman can experience self as truly expansive. In communion with the animal, that's the spirit animal, for example. There are these methods that a scientific culture like ours does not know anymore. It's just useless for these things. One has to apprentice for this kind of stuff. It's not happen from books. Because there's a practice. But the practice is very simple. Practice is to choose a focus, as Patanjali says in the Yoga Sutras, choose any focus. Fire, flame, visualization, breath, deity, whatever. Choose a focus. Stick with it. On my last trip to India, filming for the film, I met this yogi in Khajuraho. He told me an interesting story about himself. He said, he had, since as a young child, he wanted to know what's going on. So he got a science degree at New Delhi University. And after he got the degree, he realized this would have been the doing. And so he got into yoga. He got into yoga exercises. And he said, the exercise, essentially always the same exercise, it's concentration. You pick a spot in the wall, you stare at it, and don't let your mind wander. That's exercise, yoga exercise. So he did something like that. And I've known other people who did that as part of their martial arts training, and something happened. The concentration was so tight that he had what would have to be described as a Kundalini type experience, because he became so sensitive. He had to live in the forest for 2 years. Everything was too much, too bright, too much light. People were talking too loud. And he was aware of energy exchanges between himself and plants and birds. He knew what birds were saying. And he can't do it now, but he was there for a couple of years until things calmed down. And now he teaches to those that are interested. So now back to the light. What can happen is, along with the Kundalini experience, the spine straightens up. My way of thinking about it is that happens when you hit stillness, and the stillness is so great that your personality is not there. And the personality is what's tied to all these muscle tensions and so on that we carry. Once it's gone, there's a ripple opening of everything, and the spine will shoot straight up. And along with that is another self-experience. And if one is conversant in the literature, then it won't be a surprise, it won't freak one out, won't make one think I'm going crazy here. No, this is exactly as it should be. This is what I've been looking for my whole life. What am I? And what is this universe? The Yoga Vashishta says, forget everything except these two questions. Who am I? And what is this universe? Just seek that out. Don't make it complicated by saying this is yoga and yoga practice, this in theory, this and all that. Just seek these two questions. Who am I? And what is this universe? Okay, in other words, this universe is this object that I am witnessing. That's what's called the universe in common language. And who am I refers to this mystery, which if I turn around, I can't see. If I examine all of this, I say, where did this come from? My parents. Where did they come from? Their parents. Then what? I don't know. You lose it. Protons? Makes no sense. It's not a sensible answer that's given if you follow a line of causality. You end up with a Big Bang, mystery again. Or you end up at a concept called God. God is a concept. Atom is a concept. Soul is a concept. Time is a concept. Space is a concept. These are all concepts. These are all mechanical concepts. Einstein showed us time and space are concepts. There is no time. There's only temporality. Okay? What that means is that when we think of time, what we used to think of time in Newtonian terms was that time was a thing independent of the consciousness that witnesses it. So consciousness exists within this thing called time. But there's no such, that isn't reality. Okay? Consciousness is primary, and temporality is a condition within it. There's temporality, there's materiality, there's locality. Along with that is mortality. So the Rig Veda says in more complete form, immortality continuously, always, continuously sacrifices itself to become materiality, temporality, and mortality. So our self-experience is bound, usual self-experience, unless we go deeper, under those conditions, as those conditions, materiality, temporality, and consequently, mortality. But this is not my original condition. My original condition is found when all of this is turned away from, which is the instruction in the Yoga Sutra. That's all the instruction there is in there. Pick an object to concentrate and do it until something happens. And what will happen is, very often, a lot of people talk about it, is this arising of light, which is formless, which is immortal. Interesting that since Einstein, we no longer say matter, we say matter energy. Because that's more accurate. Matter energy. Energy is the same as radiation. Radiation means light. We are matter light. Matter is just a concept. Atom is a concept. You know, like the little balls, we tried to apply this concept to reality. We found that if we tried to apply it, then we also had to say this little ball was here, there, and everywhere. What kind of little ball is that? The concept explodes. Okay? What's discovered is wholeness, not atomicity. We took an old concept, tried to apply it to deeper analysis. The concept blew up, but we didn't change our language. Physicist David Bohm specifically said, the continued use of antiquated terminology like atoms and particles leads the mind in the wrong direction, totally in the wrong direction, away from wholeness, which has been found. Wholeness means subject and object are one. Okay? I'm not two things, a subject that watches myself. These are not two things. And yet that's the experience. And this experience is at the condition of materiality. It's yay big. Temporality, it's like that old. And we're in time-space now, but it's not time and space, we're in temporality. We're in materiality, we're in a different condition. So, Einsteinian relativity, matter energy, matter light. What's the condition of light? No space and time, they don't apply. No birth and death, they don't apply. The condition of light is immortality. The condition of light is what you meet when you nearly die. You will meet it when you die. You can meet it in meditation now. And when you meet it, at first it's something external, and it is immortal. So you're like, wow, this is it, whatever it is. You don't know yet it's you. But staying still, that light moves towards one. And it becomes golden rather than white. So it becomes from lunar to solar. That's what we see in the sky. The whole thing is inverted. So the sky is the sun and the moon, sun and the stars, limitless sky, black, blue, whatever, filled with these stars. So that vast sky is the stillness of consciousness. We look at all the time, but we externalize it, so that pops up out there. The stars are knowledge and energies already existing in consciousness. You can focus on a star and obtain a specific kind of knowledge. You might have seen the movie Phenomena with John Travolta. A light kind of comes at him at the beginning of the film and it knocks him down. That stuff happens. Okay? Because we're not in a materialistic universe. None of that applies. Those are not mechanical, chemical factories out there. That's not the last word on stars. So the stars are to be discovered. They're not just mechanical things. Nothing is mechanical. Nothing is material. And that's what a shaman does. But in the scientific culture, we've lost all that. So one has to go sleep under the stars. Pick one. And wait. Something will happen. In fact, the Big Dipper's got 7 stars. The 7 stars, those 7 stars are the 7 seers of the Veda. And focusing on one of those stars brings the Veda near. Pole star, this, Big Dipper here, and the Big Dipper moves around the pole star all year long. So it changes positions by season. Spring, summer, fall, winter. So the axis is the North Star, and around the North Star, just like a swastika sign, because the thing is like a swastika, the Big Dipper, a little bit's got that thing. 1, 2, 3, 4 per season, but it's always circling. Okay? So those are the 7 seers of the Veda, the first 7 beings. They're light beings. They are immortal. And they can be appealed to, because it's not a mechanical universe. It is not a material universe. It's not even something apart for oneself. The universe is not an object that one is looking at. The universe is the creative process that one is part of. The universe is self, not other. But due to science, we have this object, generally created by engineers who haven't studied philosophy or poetry. They're technicians. They're mechanics. So we've had, since Victorian times, in industrial era, a mechanical universe as a model. Clockwork winds down, there's no free will, all that's false. Now with quantum mechanics, consciousness comes to the fore. Matter is just a category which boil down as atoms which actually don't exist. It's just a concept. We try to apply it, it doesn't work. Forget atoms, they don't exist. It's just a way of talking about the world that's deficient. It'll bind you into materialism. Consciousness is primary. And the Rig Veda talks about a process. And that process is talked about later in the Upanishads and in the sutra literature, including the Yoga Sutra. But it's very simple. Immortality continuously sacrifices itself to become materiality, temporality, and mortality. So right now, we face mortality in the condition of materiality and temporality. But these are conditions within consciousness. They're categories of experience. Time is not a thing existing apart from oneself that one is like a prisoner of, living within. Space is just a concept. Okay? Materiality and locality are other ways of talking about that. Non-objectification, non-objective ways of talking about that. In other words, all we have a right to say is there's impermanence. That's it. But we go further. We say things are changing. What's changing? What is the thing that's changing? Is it an atom? That was uncalled for. There is no thing. Things are not at the bottom of anything. That's the problem. We're looking for the thing that becomes this, then it becomes that. If it becomes this, and that, then it's not possible to say that there is a thing that's a thing all by itself. Change is primary. Thingness is not. So quantum mechanics went looking for the atom. What they find? A quantum. What's a quantum? A unit of change. What is the most fundamental thing in reality, according to physics? A unit of change. Not an atom or some such that changes. Okay? Then materialism, atomism would be truth, but it's not. So these are things that are treated in the film. The film is kind of like a documentary, but it's more, I would say, like more of a mystical kind of walk through India with me kind of film. We're going to go through these temples, we're going to go to the mountains, and there's a narration in these places. And these places talk. That's where the teachings are. That's why they were built. So the narration brings out what these places are meant to talk about. And it's 70 minutes long. It's been submitted to TIFF. Hopefully it'll be accepted. If not, there's plenty of other film festivals. It's going to go around for a while. And I'll write some info on there a bit later about that. Keep on top of that if you like. So the film deals with this stuff, but it's not in a documentary kind of way that here's a temple and temple was built in this year and none of that. We're walking, stream of consciousness, and we're witnessing without getting all historical and temporal about it. Just the teachings. Self-knowledge is of two kinds, historical and timeless. And we want the timeless. That's what the film is about. Historical, it's easy. Everyone can have that. But it's never satisfactory. It's not enough. And so, 4 aims of life. I already mentioned that. Dharma, virtue, artha, prosperity, kama, enjoyment, moksha, freedom, liberation, immortality. So yoga aims at moksha. Moksha means freedom. It points to that freedom is commingled with the experience of immortality. So not we're looking for something that's immortal. Well, if it's a thing that's immortal, things are never immortal. Things have a beginning, they have an end. So, which is why the knowledge is subjective. It's not of an object that's immortal and there it is. Knowledge is subjective. It is of immortality. It is of self-experience as light, not what we call matter. Self-experience as luminosity, light, brightness, shining, but no form. Luminosity and immortality. No beginning, no end. The Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, which is considered the oldest of the Upanishads. Upanishads are kind of like explanatory literature existing along with the Vedas, which are laden with symbols. But the Upanishads speak about those symbols in more rational kind of way. So the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad has a very famous mantra, and this mantra is what the Matrix series ended with when Mr. Smith and Neo were fighting it out at the end. There was something playing in the background. That was this mantra. And the mantra translated is, may the path be illuminated from impermanence to that which is always and so is called the truth. Sat. Repeated. May the path be illuminated from asat, impermanence, to sat, the truth, the real, that which is always. Because remember we talked earlier about what's worth calling real, something that always is or something that's always changing. The ancients decided that the word real belongs to that which always is. Now when we think of the word real these days, we can make we can misunderstand it horribly. Because sometimes you hear stuff like, well, the world is impermanent, it's unreal. But it's a different kind of unreal. It's not like unreal as in inconsequential, go kill a baby, doesn't matter. No, it's that technical kind of unreal, based on the original description of it. Okay? So in terms of value, it's absolutely real. But it's a very special philosophical meaning of real and unreal that's being utilized there. So real and unreal are terrible translations of sat and asat. Best translation is impermanent, immortal. We don't put value judgments on that. That's real and that's unreal. They didn't do that. It's modern Victorian translations that did that. Victorian translations we're still grappling with, who didn't even know the language properly enough to do that properly. So, back to the mantra. May the path be illuminated from asat to sat. From all this world of temporality and change that is fun sometimes, it's horrifying at other times, it's confusing most of the time. How do I find an end to it? It asks, may the path be illuminated for that. From impermanence to immortality. May the path be illuminated from tamas to jyoti. Tamas is materiality. Materiality and temporality arise together. They're dependently originated. There's no such thing as time and space, separate things. Einstein sorted that out for us. Space-time. They're not separate things. They're not even things. They're metrics. They're ways of measuring. Okay? We only say there's impermanence. If you say there is time, then you're living in time. You're trapped in your mind. Just in the mind. But what it is living a life inhabiting an illusory worldview. That's what it amounts to. Feeling trapped in time, dwarfed by space, lost. But that isn't how it is. Okay? It's living under consciousness, as consciousness, under the condition of limited self-knowledge, which comes with materiality, temporality, mortality. So, the Brihad Aranyaka, which means, Brihad means great, Aranyaka means wilderness. So, it's the initiatory or mystical teaching of the great wilderness. That's what literal meaning of the Upanishad. It says, lead us, may the path be illuminated, from asat to sat, from impermanence to that which always is, and therefore is called the truth, or the real. Lead us from materiality, temporality, to luminosity. That will be the new self-experience, which will be the old self-experience, so it's recognized. Third statement in that mantra is, lead us from mrityu to amritam. Mrityu is death. We get the English word from mortality. Mrityu, same key root. Amrita, amrita, without death. Mrita, death. Amrita, without death. Amrita in mythical terms is this nectar of immortality in a chalice. But what is this nectar of immortality in a chalice? It's this self-knowledge. self-experiences, luminosity and immortality. So lead us from death to immortality, said 3 different ways. Okay? And in the Vedas, which are the texts that are more poetic, they don't have this kind of explanation. There's talk of Soma. And Soma, in mythical terms, is this nectar, golden liquid. That if you drink it, you become immortal. Right? It's just a story, right? Because it's mythical. It's not rational. It's a mythical description. You take something from it. But that motif is everywhere. The chalice with the elixir of life, right? It's in the East and West. It was in Roman times as well. In fact, it refers to also, it points to the rising of the sun, because internally a sun-like light rises. That solar light that one identifies with. And when that happens, then there is no more questions. And there's no more wondering, what am I? Formless. Without beginning. Without end. Continuously sacrificing myself to become all of this. And within this, then there is a wonderment which arises. Who am I, and what is this universe? And then one finds these texts, these teachings, these traditions when it's time. And you follow these teachings. And it's so simple. There's only one practice: concentration. Thinking is important only to kind of get a framework, to know there's no such thing as time, there's only temporality. There are no atoms, it's just a way of talking. It's a powerful way of talking. But there are no atoms. No one's ever found an atom by itself. In fact, Werner Heisenberg, the great physicist, said, if one wants to give an accurate description of the atom, isolated atom, one has to say that it's a set of probabilities. It's not a thing. Then one realizes, he says, that it doesn't even have the quality of material existence. Someone else heard that and said, whoa, the stuff of the world is mind stuff. It's all probabilities. So desires, the Rig Veda says, due to desire. Because in the beginning, all we can say is that there was an unfathomable potency. And you can't think about it. If you think about it, you'll end up at the Big Bang or God and wonder where they come from. Who's behind them? You can't do that. A line of causality, it just is a trap. So, and Patanjali points that out, thinking is dangerous. Because it makes up all these stories that have these unexamined notions, and one is now living in a mentally inhabiting an imaginary universe where one is lost. And how will one be found? All right? That sets up in the mind of the stories we've bought into. So Patanjali's saying, forget all that stuff, sit still. It's that simple. Concentrate. Something will happen. What will happen? Well, the motif of light is extremely important. So in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it says, fix your gaze upon the inner light and awaken from history. Fix your gaze upon the inner light and awaken from history. And maybe most people won't understand. Most people might think you're crazy. But that's always been our lot, right? We're not going to care about that starting today. So we have to do this with a lot of strength and push that nonsense back that comes at us from a dilapidated scientific worldview. Okay, science is great. Scientism, not so much. Science is wonderful, but we're talking scientism, atomism, with no basis. The great physicists have already knocked that down, but other lesser physicists are holding on to it. So, but that's where we're going. We're going to a view where consciousness is primary. And when you have a worldview where consciousness is primary, you're essentially in the Vedic worldview. You have to take then seriously the idea of reincarnation. Because what transmigrates is something, well, there's no matter. It doesn't die. It changes form. So that will have to be taken seriously. The practices that exist, such as meditation, or ritual. I don't like calling it ritual. I like calling it the ritual arts. There's the martial arts, there's the healing arts. You can be good at those or not so good at those. There's also the ritual arts. You can be good at that or not be good at that. Well, what does ritual do? Ritual paints an inspired picture of the world that you can enter for a time. And this picture of the universe is whole. It's not made of atoms and space and time. Ritual joins the finite with the infinite, joins the mortal human being with eternal cosmic rhythms. All right? That's what we are. Eternal cosmic rhythms that just frozen for a time. Few of us wake up. And if we do, then we have a responsibility to spread the word, open the prison gates. So, in the Rig Veda, soma is a nectar, but it's also said that the soma which is effective never actually touches anyone's lips, something that we talked about. It is a process. It is something internal. If we want to talk about it as internal chemistry, even that is of limited use because there's people walking around with almost no brains. What chemistry is happening there? Okay? Consciousness primary means that the best model is dream. When we dream, so what was found in quantum mechanics, that's quantum mechanics, basically this. I already mentioned what was found is that the old concepts of space, time, atom couldn't be carried forward. They were finished. But then what do you say? It's very difficult. Like, if not that, then what the hell's going on? How do you even talk about it? It's very difficult. So it's taking its time. Temporality, not time. Okay? You have to de-objectify things. Buddha said in a particular teaching that the main problem that we had was objectification. We made things that are not objects into objects. We took impermanence and made it into an object called time, and then felt trapped by it. So he made that statement very clearly, objectification. And what did physics do? Modern physics, it de-objectified. It took away space, time, atoms. Gone. Can't think about it that way anymore. You can, but it's very limited. And it's actually confusing and false. So, immortality continuously sacrifices itself to become materiality, temporality, and mortality. Self-knowledge is of two kinds, historical and timeless. And thought cannot reach the timeless. Therefore, yoga, which is meditation. Yoga is essentially meditation. All the exercises in the Yoga Sutra are about concentration. The postures, they come later, they're preparatory, they're optional. What's not optional is concentration exercises. So, the film is called, I think that it might be in the program already, but it's called Soma, S-O-M-A, The Yogic Quest. There's a website called somatheyogiquest.com. Okay, just as it sounds, S-O-M-A-T-H-E, theyogiquest.com. And there you'll get info on it. There's already info there. And there's a Facebook link on there. If you click that, you'll get the 2 trailers, which I think you really like. I think you'll like the feel of it, because it's not this teachy documentary stuff. It's like that mystical feel to it. So I think that it has the potential of shifting awareness rather than just informing. That was the attempt anyway. We'll see what you might think. So I'm at time.
Okay. Could you want to open up for some questions?
This is exactly what I was going to do.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Just want to say that I had a chance to view a part of his video with a group of people, and all reactions where we were just blown away. I mean, I don't know how to describe how we felt watching what we watched, but the visuals there, going through the journey of India and these mystical places, you could feel the energy coming through the video. And because we're five sensory people, sometimes just reading is not enough to really get the experience, but this video both has visual, audio, emotional, sensory, physical impact, just the way it's made. So it really affects you on all levels, and it is beautiful, beautiful scenery and so much more. So highly recommend getting your hands on it, and just wanted to say how amazing I thought it was, and also the people that were watching it as well, the short trailer of it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm interested if you could describe your concept of soul and how it fits into permanence, impermanence, and truth.
Right. Soul is not a Sanskrit word. The word that gets translated as soul is Atma. Atma is never described as... Well, when the word soul, as I understand it, and I think most people understand it, is something that kind of leaves the body, it's like a little ball, to me it's like an atomic theory. And it's not got a one-to-one correspondence in anything. It's a way of talking about our condition, something deep about us that's immortal. In fact, even in the Bhagavad Gita and in every other source, Atma is described not as something limited that moves from place to place, but without beginning and end. Atma is Brahma, is the story, teaching given in the Upanishads. So, soul is just not a good translation of Atma. It leads one into this picture that's still dualistic. So,
But then how do you account for the soul moving through incarnation from body to body if it does not have a consistent identity of some sort?
it's a difficult thing to talk about. So people do talk about it this way, but when you examine it, in India, you're supposed to get to Advaita, non-duality. So Krishna says that Jivatma, which is this idea of soul, is not the deepest teaching there is. So if that is how one is thinking, one is in it, one will experience it. So if the idea of soul is of that sort, that is an idea that has got a hold of one's mind, and one is living in a universe where that is how things are apparently. But in India, one is supposed to move from there to Advaita, to non-duality, which is the Upanishadic teaching. But it isn't for everyone right off the bat. So it isn't how we begin. But that is where it moves to Atma is Brahma. We get to the Mahavakyas, the great sayings of the Upanishads. Atma is Brahma, I am Brahma, Brahma is consciousness, I am consciousness. So one is to move from this idea of being a transmigrating soul to being without beginning or end. But until that happens, this is operational. And even when one dies in the Upanishads, there's information on, depending on what you think, this will happen. If you think you're transmigrating, you'll transmigrate. You'll even see your ancestors. All that's in there. It's said in a beautiful poetic way, so that, you meet the moon when you die. And the moon says, who are you? And if you say, I am you, you move forward. If you say, I am so-and-so, and I've dead now, then you go to the realm of the ancestors. And time moves, and then you reincarnate. But if you say, I am you, because you know, because you've seen, then you see the sun. And the sun asks you, who are you? And if you know enough to say, I am you, then you move past, then you are light. But if you don't know to say that, then you're in the realm of the immortal beings, beings of light. Okay, but their form. So sometimes people, when they have NDEs, they see beings of light that help them and so on. Those are the devas. Devas, root word div. Div means light, means bright. Beings that are bright, that shine. That we now see them as stars, but internally we see them as something else. It's so deep. I mean, boy, we could go on forever with your great question. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that perspective, because when I grew up, I had so difficult to take in that with the soul. I have a soul. Who am I who have a soul? Is it a body that has a soul, or is it a soul that has a body? So I contemplated very deeply until I came to that. I wrote very early about this state, and then I came to India, and
Right.
somebody mirrored that. Because I am that I am. I am.
Right.
And the soul must be something that has with mind or something to do, because it's an entity. So I would like to have a good explanation for it. I've asked so many. I found a website where many have stated what is the soul, and it's not it's different. It's not really clear.
No, I would say it's a concept. God is a concept. Soul is a concept, atom is a concept, time is a concept, space is a concept. These are all mechanical concepts.
Yeah, I remember I came to the conclusion, am I a body? I have a body, okay, who am I?
Right.
I who have the soul, no. Is it, am I God that have a soul and a body? that I came so far.
I hear you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I hear you too.
Anyone else? Well, may we be shown the path from death to immortality. Thank you very much.